all, welcome to my channel. Today we are going to be reading chapters of Alan Watts' The Way of Zen. I actually had this audiobook already on my channel. The issue was that I didn't realize the audio was all robotic and messed up in the first chapter, and I really got frustrated with that, wanted to make a change with that, so I figured we might need to have to redo this chapter and re-record it. So here we are, about to get into chapter 1, the philosophy of the Tao. And I gotta find my little book holder. Hold on. This thing is so cute. I swear when I get my 3D printer in, I'm gonna be making these. I'm gonna make molds to make these. They're just so cute. It's like you hold it with your thumb, hold the book open, and bim, you don't get your little oil prints all over the book. Ah, makes my day. It makes me so happy. I love it. Okay, so without further ado, the philosophy of the Tao. Zen Buddhism is a way and a view of life which does not belong to any of the formal categories of modern Western thought. It is not religion or philosophy. It is not a psychology or a type of science. It is an example of what is known in India and China as a way of liberation, and is similar in this respect to Taoism, Vedanta, and yoga. As will soon be obvious, a way of liberation can have no positive definition. It has to be suggested by saying what is not, somewhat as a sculptor reveals an image by the act of removing pieces of stone from the block. Historically, Zen may be regarded as the fulfillment of long traditions of Indian and Chinese culture, though it is actually much more Chinese than Indian. And since the 12th century, it has rooted itself deeply and most creatively in the culture of Japan. As the fruition of these great cultures, and is unique and peculiarly, peculiarly, instructive example of a way of liberation. Zen is one of the most precious gifts of Asia to the world. The origins of Zen are much Taoist as Buddhist, and because its flavor is so peculiarly Chinese, it may be best to begin by inquiring into this Chinese ancestry illustrating, at the same time, what is meant by a way of liberation by the example of Taoism. Much of the difficulty and mystification which Zen presents to the Western student is the result of its unfamiliarity with Chinese ways of thinking, ways which differ startlingly from our own, and which are for that reason of special value to us, and attaining a critical perspective upon your own ideas. The problem here is not simply one mastering different ideas, differing from our own, as, say, the theories of Kant differ from those of Descartes, or those of Calvinicists, from those of Catholics. Excuse me. Give me one moment. So sorry, what am I doing? I usually start these off with lighting a smoky. So sorry. Forgot this time. How unprofessional of me. Okay, let's continue. So, the problem is to appreciate differences in the basic premises of thought and in the very methods of thinking. And these are so often overlooked that our interpretations of Chinese philosophy are apt to be projection of characteristicality, Western ideas into Chinese terminology. Some big fucking words, Alan. You're using some big words in this book. This is inevitable disadvantage of studying Asian philosophy by purely literary methods of Western scholarship. For words can be communicative only between those who share similar experiences. Interesting. In theory, really, it's just about letting the control of the mindset of what you've been brainwashed into, your modern mindset. It's about letting that go and allowing the child and the creativeness and the innocence in you to once again blossom. It's to allow yourself the indulgences of, being overconsumed in sense and thought, and allowing your mind. I like to look at like deep core meditation as more like daydreaming. You really are going into yourself, and it takes a while. It takes practice, just like anything that we do. It's not like a singer is good at singing all of a sudden. You have to practice that meditation, and through time you will open barriers in your mind. And that's what these people talk about. That's what these monks talk about. That's what, enlightenment is supposed to be kind of viewed as, is exercising your mind and allowing your mind to just let go. And I like how Hindus describe it as falling to a pit of nothing, a black bottomless pit. And it's just like blindly throwing yourself into it, basically. And I feel like that has so much truths to it, just because of the concept of, how much of a mindset we put ourselves in to just obtain to society and their morals and everything. And we conform ourselves into these really strict people, that in doing so, you lose yourself. You lose pieces of yourself. And we notice that. Our subconsciouses notice that. Our bodies notice that. People in our lives notice that. I'll keep going, but I just wanted to enlighten on that particular point. This is not to go so far as to say that so rich and subtle a language as English is simply incapable of expressing Chinese ideas. On the contrary, it can say much more than it has been believed possible by some Japanese and Chinese students of Zen and Taoism, whose familiarity with English leaves something to be desired. The difficulty is not so much in the language as in the thought patterns which have hitherto seemed inseparable from the academic and scientific way of approaching the subject. The unsuitability of these patterns for such subjects as Taoism and Zen is largely responsible for the impression that the Oriental mind is mysterious, irrational, and inscrutable. Furthermore, it need not be supposed that the matters are so peculiarly Chinese or Japanese that they have no point of contact with anything in our own culture. While it is true that none of the formal divisions of Western science and thought corresponds in a way of liberation, R.H. Bleeth's marvelous study of Zen and English literature has shown most clearly that the essential insights of Zen are universal. Might I add, Alan Watts was a big, he was a philosopher from 1970s, and some of the methods and studies, might be outdated. So, mind you, if he refers to some shit, you going back to the 70s to study on what the hell he's talking about. I've had to do that a few times because he does refer other philosophers and their speaks in their words, and I've gotten very interested in what exactly he was talking about, so please don't lose my spot. It's very complicated. Okay. He does go on though, huh? The reason why Taoism and Zen present at first sight such a puzzle to the Western mind is that we have taken a restricted view of human knowledge. You don't say. For us, almost all knowledge is what a Taoist would call conventional knowledge, because we do not feel what we really know anything unless we can represent it to ourselves in words, or in some other system of conventional signs, such as notations or mathematics or music. Such knowledge is called conventional because it is a matter of social agreement as to the codes of communication. Just as people speaking the same language have tact agreements as to what words shall stand for what things, so the members of every society and every culture are united by bounds of communication, resting upon all kinds of agreement as to the classification and valuation of actions and things. So basically, he's just saying it's not something you can comprehend right away. I get it, Alan. Let's get on to the ways of Zen. Thus, the task of educating is to make children fit to live in a society by persuading them to learn and accept its codes and rules and conventions of communication whereby the society holds itself together. There is first the spoken language. The child is taught to accept tree and not bojum as the agreed sign for that, pointing to the object. We have no difficulty in understanding the word tree is a matter of convention. Which is much less obvious is that convention also governs the delineation of the thing to which the word is assigned. For the child has to be taught not only what the word are to stand for, what things, but also the way in which this culture has tactically agreed to divide things from each other, to mark out the boundaries within our daily experience. Thus, scientific convention decides whether an eel shall be a fish or a snake. A grammatical convention determines what experiences shall be called objects and what shall be called events or actions. How arbitrary such conventions can be seen for the question, what happens to my fist, non-object, when I open my hand? The object miraculously vanishes because an action was distinguished by the part of speech usually assigned to the thing. In English, the differences between things and actions are clearly, if not always logically, distinguished, but the great number of Chinese words do duty for both nouns and verbs, so that one who thinks in Chinese has little difficulty in seeing the objects and are also events. In other words, in our world, oh shit, my bad. The objects are also events. That our world is a collection of processes rather than entities. Besides language, the child has to accept many other forms of code, for the necessities of living together require agreement as to codes of law and ethics. If etiquette and art of weights, measures and numbers, and above all, of role. We have difficulty. One second. Let me change the page. Okay. I just highlight this real quick. We have difficulty in communicating with each other unless we can identify ourselves in terms of roles: father, teacher, worker, artist, regular guy, gentleman, sportsman, and so forth. To the extent that we identify ourselves with these stereotypes and the rules of behavior associated with them, we ourselves feel that we are someone because our fellow has less difficulty in accepting us, that is, in identifying us and feeling that we are under control. A meeting of two strangers at a party is always somewhat embarrassing when the host has not identified their roles in introducing them, for neither knows what rules of conversation and action should be observed. That's a very interesting point to make. I do feel like that would be the highlight of the conversation. Who is that? You know, who are they to the host? Who are they to the house? Are they just, you know, here? Or I could see that if someone didn't know someone at a party, they'd be like, who's that? You know, that would be the general notion of curiosity. What? I'm just going to roll. Oh my God. Coughing to death, so sorry. Once again, it is easy to see the conventional character of roles. For a man who is a father may also be a doctor and an artist, as well as an employee and a brother. And it is obvious that even some total of these roles labels would be far from supplying an adequate description of the man himself, even though it may place him in certain general classifications. But the conventions which govern human identity are subtle and much less obvious than these. We learn very thoughtfully through far less explicitity to identify ourselves with an equally conventional view of myself, for the conventional self or person is composed mainly of a history consisting of selected memories. And beginning from the moment of oh shit, some words I struggle with, I apologize. Parturition, Parturation. Parturition. I am so sorry, I'm slaughtering the shit out of some of these words, my bad. According to convention, I am not simply what I am doing now, I am also what I have done, and my conventionality edited version of my past is made to seem almost more real me than what I am at this moment. For what I am seems so fleeting and intangible, but what I was is fixed and final. It is the firm basis for predictions of what I will be in the future, and so it comes about that I am most closely identified with what no longer exists than what I actually with what actually is. It is important to recognize that the memories and past events which make up a man's historical identity are no more than a selection from the actual infinitude of events and experiences some have picked out abstract as significant, and this significance has of course been determined by conventional standards. I'm going to be honest, 28 pages and the chapter is long. Might do part 1, part 2. Probably going to end up doing that because that's where I happened last time also, was like I lost place of where I was and I didn't stop at the end of the chapter, so that threw me off really hard and I was like, but there's so many words in this book where he carries it on to the next line that my dyslexia just fucks me up sometimes, so I apologize. And I'm getting very stoned while reading this, so apologies if I have a few grammar errors, but no one's perfect, all right? Okay, all right, let's get on. One of the cutest things of why I actually started reading audiobooks online was just to become a better storyteller so I could read books to my daughter when she was younger. I realized, like, me reading out loud, reading in my head, it was like, whatever. It was fast, it was adequate, it was good, but I never read out loud before, usually. I'm not good at public speaking, usually. So I wanted to get better for my kids so I could, entertain her, because I realized it wasn't as entertaining. All right, try to bring a little bit more light into the room. Sun's going down and I can barely see. Not good for the eyesight. Let's continue, sorry. For the very nature of conventional knowledge is that the system of abstractions. It consists of signs and symbols which things and events are reduced to their general outlines. As the Chinese character zhen stands for man, for being the utmost simplification and generalization of the human form. It is the same is true of words other than ideographs. The English word man, fish, star, flower, run, grow, all denote classes of objects or events of which may be recognized as members of their class by very simple attributes. abstracted from the total complexity of the things themselves. Abstraction is thus almost a necessity for communication, since it enables us to represent our experiences with simple and rapidly made gaffes of the mind. When we say that we can think only of one thing at a time, this is like saying that the Pacific Ocean cannot be swallowed at a gulp. It has to be taken in a cup and drowned bit by bit. Abstractions and conventional signs are like the cup. They reduce experiences to units, simple enough to be comprehended one at a time. In a similar way, curves are measured by reducing them to a sequence of tiny straight lines, or by thinking of them in terms of squares, which they cross when plotted on a graph paper. Other examples of the same process are the newspaper photograph and the transmission of television. In the former, a natural scene is reproduced in terms of light and heavy dots arranged on a screen or grid-like pattern so as to give the general impression of a black and white photograph when seen without a magnifying glass. Much as it may look like the original scene, it is only a reconstruction of the scene in terms of dots, somewhat as our conventional words and thoughts are reconstructions of experience in terms of abstract signs. Even more like the thought process, the television camera transmits a natural scene in terms of linear scenes of impulses which may be passed along a wire. Thus, communication by conventional signs of this type gives excuse me, sorry, I'll smack myself in the face and shit. What is wrong with me? Gives us an abstract, one at a time translution of a universe in which things are happening all together at once. A universe whose concrete reality always escapes perfect description in these abstract terms. The perfect description of a small particle of dust by these means would take everlasting time, since one would have to account for every point in its volume. I'm trying to get where he's at right now, but yeah, I guess maybe I'm a one thing at a time kind of thinker, definitely. I've struck or I'm a million things at a time and then shit gets complicated. It's one or the other. One at a time, one at a time. Okay. The linear, one at a time character of speech and thought is particularly noticeable in all languages using alphabets. Representing experience in long strings of letters, it is not easy to say why we must communicate with others, speak, and with ourselves think by this one at a time method. Life itself does not proceed in this cumbersome linear fashion. In our own organisms can hardly in our own organisms, that's literally what it says, okay, could hardly live for a moment if they had to control themselves by taking thought of every breath, every beat of the heart, every natural impulse. If we are to find some explanation for this characteristic of thought, the sense of sight offers a suggestive analogy. For we have two types of vision, central and peripheral, not unlike the spotlight and the floodlight. Central vision is used for accurate work like reading, in which our eyes are focused on one small area after another, like spotlights. Peripheral vision is less conscious, less bright than the intense ray of the spotlight. We use it for seeing at night and for taking subconscious notice of objects and movements not in the direct line of central vision. Unlike the spotlight, it can take in many things at a time. There is then an analogy, and perhaps more than mere analogy, between central vision and consciousness. One at a time thinking and between peripheral vision and the rather mysterious process which enables us to regulate the incredible complexity of our bodies without thinking at all. It should be noted further that we call our bodies complex as a result of trying to understand them in terms of linear thought, of words and concepts. But the complexity is not so much in our bodies as in the task of trying to understand them by this means of thinking. It is like trying to make out the features of a large room with no other light than a single bright ray. It is as complicated as trying to drink water with a fork instead of a cup. Oh, I had to. Oh, take a moment. I need to add in more light to the room. Sorry if it's too bright, but this is where we're at. I don't want, my eyes are already bad enough. Let's be real. And age catching up to me. I'm starting to do this with books and shit. Life's life, right? Damn, now I'm really screwed sitting here smoking this down for a fucking minute. Shit. Alright, let's get back to it. Apologies. Oh, stick through to the end because I'm going to share someone I recently subscribed to that's freaking hilarious, awesome. I love it, and I want to share it with the world. So stick around because I'll be sharing that subscription towards the end. All right, let's get back to it. Yeah, fucking hilarious. I'm telling you, it's a great laugh. So we're gonna get back into it. Get back into the philosophy. Let's go. Fuck, what was I? In this respect, the Chinese written language has a slight advantage over our own, and is perhaps symptomatic of a different way of thinking. It is linear, still a series of abstractions taken in one at a time. But its written signs are a little closer to life than spelled words because they are essentially pictures. And, as a Chinese proverb puts it, one showing is worth 100 sayings. Compare, for example, the ease of showing someone how to tie a complex knot with the difficulty of telling him how to do it in words alone. Now, the general tendency of Western mind is to feel that we do not really understand what we cannot represent, what we cannot communicate, by linear signs, by thinking. We are like the wallflower, who cannot learn a dance unless someone draws him a diagram of the steps, who cannot get by the feel for some reason we do not trust and do not fully use the peripheral vision of our minds. We learn music, for example, by restricting the whole range of tone and rhythm to a notion of fixed tonal and rhythmic intervals, a notion which is incapable of representing Oriental music. But the Oriental musician has a rough notation which he uses only as a reminder of a melody. He learns music not by reading notes, but by listening to the performance of a teacher, getting the feel of it, and copying him. And this enables him to acquire rhythmic and tonal sophistications matched only by those Western jazz artists who use the same approach. We are not suggesting that Westerners simply do not use peripheral mind. Being human, we use it all the time, and every artist, every workman, every athlete calls into play some special development of its powers, but it is not academically a philosophically respectable. We have hardly begun to realize its possibilities, and it seldom, if ever, occurs to us that one of its most important uses is for that knowledge of reality which we try to attain by the cumbersome calculations of theology, metaphysics, and logical inference. I mean, he ain't wrong. He ain't wrong. He ain't wrong. Shit. When we turn to angel, we're just fucking dumb. We're not gonna get it. That's what he's saying. He's like, Westerners are not gonna fucking get this, man. But I will try. Come on, Alan. Explain it to me. Oh God. Too funny. When we where the fudge am I? Okay, I found myself. When we turn to ancient Chinese society, we find two philosophical traditions playing complementary parts: Confucianism and Taoism. Generally speaking, the former concerns itself with the linguistic, ethical, legal, and ritual conventions which provide the society with its systems of communication. Confucianism, in other words, preoccupies itself with conventional knowledge, and under its auspices, children are brought up so that their originally wayward and whimsical natures are made to fit the Procrustean bed of the social order? Procrustean bed. What the fuck does that mean? Of the social order. Procrustean bed. Give me a minute. I for real had to look this up because I was like, what the fudgesicle did that mean? There's a meaning towards it. Hold on. A Procrustean bed is a scheme or pattern that focuses someone or something to fit in an unnatural or arbitrary scheme, often by violent or ruthless methods. It can also refer to an arbitrary standard that requires exact conformity. The term comes from Greek mythology, where Procrustes was a villain son of Poseidon who would force travelers to fit into his iron bed. If they were too tall, he would cut off limbs. If they were too short, he would stretch them. Jesus. All right, well, that's what it, I had to find a definition. So, yeah, Okay, so, back to it. Now we know what that is. Of the social order. Okay. The individual defines himself and his place in society in terms of the Confucian formel. Taoism, on the other hand, is generally a pursuit of older men, and especially of men who are retiring from active life in the community. Their retirement from society is a kind of outward symbol of an inward liberation from the bounds of conventional patterns of thought and conduct. For Taoism concerns itself with conventional knowledge and the understanding of life directly, instead of in the abstract, linear terms of representational thinking. Confucianism presides then over the socially necessary task of forcing the original spontaneity of life into the rigid rules of convention, a task which involves not only conflict and pain, but also the loss of that peculiar naturalness and unself-consciousness for which little children are so much loved, and which is times regained by saints and sages. The function of Taoism is to undo the inevitable damage of its discipline, and not only to restore, but also to develop the original spontaneity, which terms, I'm sorry if I fuck up this saying, my bad, no disrespect, I'm just trying. I don't know your I don't know how to say this. Tujan, or self-sowness, for the spontaneity of a child is still childish. Like everything else about him, his education fosters his rigidity, but not his spontaneity. In certain natures, the conflict between social convention and represents spontaneity is so violent that it manifests itself in crime, insanity, and neurosis, which are the prices we pay for the otherwise undoubtable benefits of order. Okay, I think we're going to go to the end of this page, and then we're probably going to end it for part 1. And then I'm going to share who this new subscriber is that I just went to, or this new channel is that I subscribed to. They are worth it. I'm so excited to share them because they're, oh my god, they're too funny. And if you don't check them out, seriously, you're not in for a good laugh. Come on now, everyone needs a good laugh in life. Okay, I'm ready. But Taoism must on no account be understood as a revolution against convention. Although it has sometimes been used as a pretext for revolution, Taoism is a way of liberation which never comes by means of revolution, since it is notorious that most revolutions establish worse tyrannies than they destroy. To be free from convention is not to spurn it, but not to be deceived by it. It is to be able to use it as an instrument instead of being used by it. The West has no recognized institution corresponding to Taoism because our Hebrew Christian spiritual tradition identifies the absolute God with the moral and logical order of convention. This must also be called a major cultural catastrophe because it weighs the social order with the excessive authority, inviting just those revolutions against religion and tradition which have been so characteristic of Western history. It is one thing to feel oneself in conflict with social sanctioned conventions, but quite another to feel at odds with the very root and ground of life, and with the absolute itself. The latter feeling nurtures a sense of guilt so preposterous that it must issue either in denying one's own nature or in rejecting God, because the first of these alternates is ultimately impossible, like chewing off one's own teeth. The second becomes inevitable, where such palliatives as the palliatives, palliatives, as the confessional are no longer effective. As in the nature of revolutions, and the revolution against God gives place to the worst tyranny of the absolutist state, worse because it cannot even forgive, and because it recognizes nothing outside the powers of its jurisdiction. For while the latter was theoretically true of God, his earthly representative, the Church, was always prepared to admit that though the laws of God were immutable, no one could presume to name the limits of his mercy. When the throne of the Absolute is left vacant, the relative usurps it and commits the real idolatry. That got confusing. The real integrity in the real indignity against God, the absolutizing of a concept, a conventional abstraction. Interesting. That got really very, very deep, man. It just got so deep. I love that he's explaining it all, but did you need 12 pages? Alan Watts gets deep. It's interesting because I've heard a lot of his speeches compared to like his writing is so much more in depth, and there's definitely a few times I have to pull out a dictionary because I'm illiterate as fuck. Some of these words I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? Like, for real, I apologize. Oh, but I'm trying here, and I'm enjoying, I'm grasping the general concept of what he's saying. I am enjoying this book, so I'm interested to see where he goes and what he has to say later on. Okay. I just had to pull it up really quick. The channel's called Wizard with Guns. They are hilarious. The tag is Wizards with Guns. So the video I watched, it wasn't actually this one. Let me see, where is it? Okay, it's in videos, so let me see if it's at the top of videos when I look. Okay, it is at the top of videos when I look. That video, You're a Wizard Orb. Let me see if I could just... I'm telling you, this video is the funniest thing I've ever watched in my entire life. Oh my God, I've never laughed so much. Like, I died inside. This was great. And I love sharing this channel. This channel is hilarious. This whole video was amazing. And please, I want more of this content for real. This shit got me rolling. It was so good. Oh, you're a wizard. Orb. Try it. Check it out. Oh my God, I was just caught myself watching it again because it was just cracking me up. I cannot for the life of me get over how funny that shit is. It's too funny. Thank you so much for joining me for part 1 of the first chapter of Alan Watts' The Way of Zen. We're going to continue on a bit later, and I've also got other Tank Girl series that's coming around. I know we're getting towards the end. We're getting towards the fun part of her blowing up Chankerville. So I know that some people are like, come on, let's get on with the next few chapters, and I will get to it. I just wanted to revamp Alan Watts because I felt like it was unfair that I didn't realize that the first chapter sounds so robotic. It was kind of messed up, so I wanted to redo and give it some justice. You know, justice served. Yep, there we go. Thank you all for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day. Lose your mind and find your soul. If you haven't subscribed yet, what are you doing? You know? I mean, anywho, have a nice day. Bye.